Down, Lloyd. You guys ready to do this thing? Here we go. Jason, you can't be yawning yet. All right. Going live in three, two, one. On this week's show, Jason's back and he's brought his rant hat. All this more in episode 133 of the Inside Infinity podcast. Do you like Disney as much as we like Disney? Well, of course you do. If you do, you should head on over to MediaMeltdownPodcast.com. Check out the Mousecast, a bi-weekly podcast about all things Disney. Disney rumors, news, theme parks, and more. Head over to MediaMeltdownPodcast.com. Look for the Mousecast. Hello everyone, welcome to Inside Infinity episode number 133, recorded May 2nd, 2016. I'm one of your three handsome dashing hosts, Will. Joining me once again, Jason, did I lie to all the fine folks out there in the internet land? Where's your rant hat?
I don't want to cause a panic, but I don't know where that is. I cannot see that.
Yeah, but your Donald hat, that's what you're known for. Lloyd, you even have a rant hat, don't you? Oh, look, there it is.
Yep, that is troubling. I have no idea what that is.
Did you have the realization that is missing during my lead-in right there?
During that intro, I'm literally like, where is that hat?
Oh my goodness. You see what
Send
happens?
your Donald Duck hats immediately, people.
Yep.
Send them all to Australia. I don't know where that is. That's really frustrating.
You will pay in jars of Vegemite, right?
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
Jason, so happy to have you back today, buddy.
Oh, it's good to be back temporarily again for the next hour, and then I'll be gone. Who knows how long, but
Yeah.
I'll be back.
But you always find a way to come back, so
I do.
Awesome, man. Well, we're happy to have you. You're going to be running things in here just a little bit, so for now we're going to move past you and interrupt Lloyd right as he's drinking his soda. Lloyd, can you be any more? I think you should two-fist it. Canada Dry in one hand and Tim Hortons in the other.
It's made with real ginger, Will.
Is it?
Oh.
Is it? So honestly, is that
They
a
have to put it
popular
on the
drink?
can. Is it a popular? I don't think so. I think it's more popular in the States than it is up here.
I mean, I love ginger ale, but you always seem to be drinking it, that or tea.
It's the champagne of ginger ales, Will. Canada Dry.
Is there? I don't even know of any brands other than like the specialty
Schweppes.
soda brands. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's the other one. That's the only two that I know.
Yeah,
I'm all about the Canada Dry though.
that's right. You have to. It has your the motherland on the title there. How are you doing tonight, Lloyd?
I'm doing okay, Will. I'm setting up some new hardware, and I got it about 45-50% done before the show started. So I'm feeling the draw, but I'm gonna give you guys as much time as you need so we can do the show. But man, when you first start setting up equipment and then you have to like go to bed or you have to go to work or there's something that gets in the way, isn't that the worst thing? I hate that. So it's going to be a really late night tonight while I go set up my new joystick for my RetroPie station that I'm setting up. So
Well,
other than that, man,
all the fun doing it too, right?
oh, it's going to be great. I love tinkering with that. So yeah, no, man, it's been good. Been relaxing. It's like 21 degrees up here, which is 70.
Ooh.
So it's going outside and having barbecues and going for bike rides with the kids. It's been it's pretty damn fantastic.
Nice. It's been snowing here the last. What temperature is it? Fall for you, Jason?
I don't know. I'm barely outside. What do you mean? I'm at work.
Okay.
I'm at home. I don't know what's happening out there.
All right. Well,
I told you I don't deal in fall and all that junk.
that's
Move
true.
on.
That's true. You have two seasons, deadly
That's
animal
right.
seasons, and
Which
winter.
one do the deadly spiders fall from the sky?
Yeah.
I always forget stuff which season that is.
That's constantly.
Oh, hey, it's not even season. That's scary.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's go ahead and get the show started, boys. I'd like to say hello to everyone who is watching us live on this non-standard show. You can watch us live each and every week-ish, someday, generally Wednesdays, twitch.tv/Disney Infinity TV. I'd like to say hello to Agent Sardan, Blue Jay, good seeing you, C5, welcome, Captain Disney, how's it going, Alvin? Gavin Infinity, German Bold Italic, good seeing you, Tad, Jen Allen, Miss Kip, Romulus, the Maxi Geek, what's up, Luke, and Wendy. Welcome everyone to tonight's show. We're excited to be bringing you an Inside Infinity podcast. Even though we're not going to dwell on this because we've been talking for the last hour pre-show about this, but even though there's no Infinity news, we're still going to be bringing you some good Infinity content. So that's why we brought Jason back. Well, that's not why. Jason, it's the one every 5 weeks that you can come back. But luckily, 5 weeks is just enough time for you to put all of those things you want to talk about in your
Pent up rage, 5 weeks of pent up rage, and then just explode.
I was gonna
once every
say
5 weeks.
positive critique, but yes, pent up rage works as well.
Yes. That's one and the same, really.
so I just got Jason, Luke in the chat, who is Australian, is correcting you and telling you that it is autumn there. So autumn is fall. We call fall autumn as well.
Right.
And I'm rather embarrassed that you did not know that.
Well, as I said, season's been nothing to me. Here in Melbourne, it's cold in the morning, hot in the afternoon.
Do you use tunnels to travel everywhere?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Whatever. I sleep on the train. I'm like a zombie on the way to the train. Whatevs.
Too funny.
Are we the weather show or the Disney Infinity show? Let's.
You haven't heard the news. We've transitioned to a meteorology podcast. What do you want to talk about tonight, Jason? The floor is yours.
Nothing.
All right. Well,
thanks. Thanks,
See you guys next
week. I just came from a big Disney Infinity shop. As everyone knows, I've been super, super busy. Literally, when you're working all the time, I can't even get to a shop. I start work before shops open and I end work before they close. It's a nightmare. So anyway, I was way behind on Infinity purchases and I thought, you know what? I got to get out there and I got to go buy some Disney Infinity. So I went out there and boy, I'm glad I did, because there is massive shortages here in this country of Disney Infinity figures. Literally, I don't know whether you ever experienced it, but I was going from store to store, and as my store options narrowed, the panic went up. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to get these figures. No one's got them. And when EB Games, or GameStop as you know it, tell you, oh, we're sold out of that at our warehouse level, that's like, thanks.
Bad news bears.
So I learned the hard lesson that people, particularly in all the Disney Infinities.
Sorry, you're breaking up. Particularly what?
Particularly for Australians, on day one, get all the Disney Infinities. There's no guarantees it's all going to be there when you go to buy it a few weeks later. So, anyways,
you're having flashbacks to the Crystal days.
Pretty much.
That's like Canada and light effects figures. They're not here. There's nowhere to get them. There isn't even get them on the first day. They're just not around at all.
Oh, really? Because there's shelves of light FX figures here. Shelves of them.
I'm convinced we only got 4 of the figures up here. Darth Vader, Luke, Anakin, and Kylo Ren. I don't think we got Yoda. At least I didn't see it. Any of the other ones, I don't believe we saw them here at all. It's really annoying.
Huh.
They're all like $24 though over here. I'm not paying $24 for a light up lightsaber. Yeah, no. So, anyways, last time I was on, roughly 5 weeks ago, I don't know. I was mentioning how I got hit by this glitch and my Hall of Heroes reset. And so that's part of the reason I'm like, are you serious? I have to go put everything on the base again. But I thought, you know what, at least I'll have new figures, to work with and whatnot. And so I did that. And yeah, I was just reminded, it's like this game is so glitchy. I remember I was walking around the outside of the Hall of Heroes and there's a waterfall. I don't know whether you know the waterfall I'm talking about, but it flickers on and off. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. And I'm like,
Like that.
this is the Hall of Heroes. This is a static prop. How is there a glitch in this thing? I was just, and I'm like, this game looks like a PS3 game. I hadn't played it. Full disclosure, in like maybe 2 months, maybe more.
But in your defense, like you don't have time to play games. Period. Right.
No,
I think
I
it's
don't.
important
I
for
don't.
people to know. It's not like you're prioritizing other gaming. It's like you have
No,
no
no,
time.
no, no, literally. But I do play it with my daughters on the weekends in where because they ask me all the time. So that's a good thing. But yeah, I was just reminded like this game looks like a PS3 title. It's full of glitches, and I was reminded why I wasn't that phased when I stopped playing it last time. The updates that I've seen doesn't seem to have fixed anything. And I don't want to, sound like a downer on that, but like that's literally the feelings I was having. I thought I've just spent the same amount of money that I'm going to spend on buying Uncharted 4 later this week. And it's like a continuous, it's like imagining like an old steam train and I'm shoveling the coal. I'm shoveling buckets of money into this game and it's a glitch fest that I'm like $35 it cost me for Battlegrounds. I'll play it for like an hour and then never play it again. I like I don't know. It's just frustrating. And like I haven't even bought half my Disney Infinity and yet it's still like I don't know. I love the game, but I just can't see the justification of the sheer amount of money this game costs to the quality that it is. Lloyd could speak to this because I know he wants to speak some, but like I've heard nothing but great things about the graphics on the new Ratchet and Clank game. Is it the on PlayStation 4?
Yeah.
And I'm like thinking, now I personally haven't played it, but all I hear about is that it's incredible looking graphics, if not one of the best looking games on PS4. And
It's
I'm
like a
like,
action Pixar movie.
yeah,
It's
and it's like
amazing.
$40 or something like that. It's a cheap game, $40-$50. I
'Cause
spent more than that
it's
on figures yesterday. And I've got a PS3 looking game sitting there. You know what I mean? I just don't feel like with the money that we're spending on it, like how many retail quality games have we put into Disney Infinity, like dollar amounts, regardless of you getting the figures. Figures are still top notch. It's the only reason if we didn't have the figures and we were only buying digital characters, I would have stopped buying Disney Infinity long ago. Like Disney Infinity characters. Because even more so, and as much as I don't think I'll play a lot of Battlegrounds, because it's not to say that it's bad or anything, it's just not my thing. You've got to give Battlegrounds credit for at least giving you something to do with the last gen characters. What other play sets can you say you can bring in the old? Like as I'm putting these figures down on the base, I'm going, I'll never use this character again. I'll never use this character again. Who's going to play with that? And it's like, you're good for gathering dust on a shelf and looking good there, but that's cool. I'm fine with that. I get value out of that. But I don't know. I just think that maybe, like in my heart of hearts, I'm hoping that Disney Infinity have gone for this Disney Infinity.
Uh-oh.
Disney Infinity amazing pose is what he was.
Am I back?
You're back now.
Oh, I think you're back now. Yep.
I'm hoping that Disney Infinity are doing a complete redo look at the thing. I was even thinking today, and this is going to sound super strange. What if Nintendo actually got it right in the concept of the amiibo that characters for use in any other game? You know what I mean? Like clearly they're not capitalizing on it, but so many other Disney games have come out recently, like that I've played on the, mobile, like Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. I'm loving the the
Magical
new
Dice.
magical dice game.
Yeah.
Not really loving it, but like
Yep.
the card collecting in that is so addictive. It's like I've spoken about bringing cards to Disney Infinity for a long time, and that game is proof that you give me something collectible in game, I'm there. And that's when I'm the most addicted in Disney Infinity is collecting stuff out of the toy store.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When it's
Mhm.
still a collect fest.
Yeah.
Once you've completed the collections, the game is, it starts on a sliding scale. Particularly when I've got little time to spend. I haven't got time anymore to spend 30 hours in the toy box, which, in my opinion, is still the strongest part of Disney Infinity with the most potential.
Yeah.
But it's a hard ask to be into.
The interesting thing that you brought up is every other Toys to Life, including Amiibo, there's no central repository where all this data goes. Like in Disney Infinity, you log into your Disney account and you can go to a website. You can see all the figures you have. You can see all the stuff you've done. You can see your Sparks, yada yada. Why are like the iOS games not tying into this? Like that's just that's
Mhm.
lost. That's a lost cool feature to at least sell more figures. Like play, I don't know, Magic Kingdoms, and if you own these figures, you get a special decoration or whatever, and that'll encourage people. Like it'd be synergy across all their different platforms. Like there was, I still go back to this. Like one of the first interviews I heard about Disney Infinity when they said that this would be the future of all Disney games, where everything would revolve around Disney Infinity. You don't go buy a new game, you buy a plugin for Disney Infinity. Obviously, that's difficult with the engine that they're dealing with Disney Infinity. I totally get that from a development standpoint, but you already have the data store. You have all of your stuff in one area of the cloud, and you're playing on a mobile phone, which is always connected to the cloud. So there should be some crosstalk there. Unlock stuff in Disney Infinity, like you download whatever that. What is it? The Inside Out bubble game where you're popping bubbles. You unlock a special thing, a toy that appears in your game because you've gotten a certain score on this game. Like they should be cross promoting this stuff like crazy, because that's what Disney's all about, the synergy. It's about, hey, this movie's coming out. Let's put this poster for this other movie on the wall of this scene so people see that and they're like, oh yeah, I want to go see that. And I'm going to go buy this toy, and it comes with a thing that has a picture of something else. Like they're always about this cross promotion, and it seems like that's entirely lacking on the game studios, which is a little bit disappointing, and it's like a huge loss for potential sales to people that maybe don't know anything about Disney Infinity as much as it is advertised.
Spot on.
Yeah, and it's I wonder the back end because it's such a game development. I saw this really interesting photo that someone took and they tweeted about, and they're like, "Are you sure you want to be a game developer?" And it was a wall that was nothing but a huge flow chart that was just going through the process of development. And so, I mean, it's building these games is, especially on the console, because they're generally more complicated. They're console quality. They're not bite-sized games. Not to discount like mobile game development. Don't get me wrong, but just the sheer amount of work that's involved and how many moving pieces have to connect together. But then you see it. Okay, all these other smaller areas that's owned by the same company. Yes, they are ran separately in some cases. It just I totally agree with both of you guys. It's like there's so much missed opportunity there, and crossover that could help both sides, help mobile and just the greater Disney Interactive.
Like basically all they have to do is they have to write an API that their games can talk to. Like this could be really simple from a development standpoint. Mm-hmm. Like if you're an iOS developer, you already include Game Center libraries to activate Game Center. A Disney game developer would just have to include the Disney achievement app or whatever the heck it's going to be called, and it could read data from the cloud and it can write data to the cloud, and it would be super simple for a game developer just to plug something in really late in development even to get that running. Like they have this data store that is tracking all this great stuff that we're doing in Disney Infinity. It would be nice to see a lot more interaction between some of their other game studios that are working on their apps.
Yeah, could not agree more.
I agree. And I think that's why when I looked at the game, when I was looking at the game and going, this feels like a PS3 title, I was thinking maybe just the Disney Infinity engine's doing all it can. You know what I mean? Like it has been an incremental journey for them. And I feel like maybe they've come so far that a lot of these things like multiplayer and all that sort of stuff are just so problematic because of where the engine's at. And that's why I feel like it needs a complete rewrite. And if they are going to go down this road of extending the life cycle, I just don't think it's good enough to not have playset carryover anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like I hope that we're moving towards that time where once a playset's released, it's always playable moving forward. Just little things like
Yeah.
that I just don't feel like my gut tells me that just aren't possible in its current iteration. You know what I mean? And that's a lot of work though to rewrite
Yeah.
all of Disney Infinity. Like I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but yeah, it is just frustrating, and I agree. Like I'd like to see more, flow with other mobile apps and stuff like that, different activities rather than just. I mean, you talked about last week about the disappointing efforts of updating all these other different versions of Disney Infinity, like the Apple TV version and the iOS version and all that. I think the days of trying to create the same experience on all the different platforms are done. Let's just switch it up and create a different experience on all those other platforms that are augmenting and improving the main console experience, or possibly PC. I know we have PC viewers, so
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Well, and it's weird because, sorry for my dog barking, but it's weird because it seems like they're making steps in some way towards progress on that, and then other steps backwards. So the fact that you can now reload all your figures without having to input the code as well as your power disk to have them in the iOS version of the game, that's something we've been wanting since the very first version of the iOS game. But then the lack of support for iOS with the newer figures, the playsets, and on iOS, or excuse me, mobile PC as well as Apple TV. It's just like I don't
And again,
know.
it's the same old story. It's not necessarily the technical issues. It's the lack of communication. It's the
Mhm.
lack of not telling us what's going on. What are your plans for improving toy box stability? What are your plans for doing this? You know what I mean? There's just no communication, which just, in my opinion, is an absolute, pie in the face to the fans that are literally spending hundreds of dollars. Naughty Dog aren't getting hundreds and hundreds of dollars for creating Uncharted 4, which I'm sure is going to be a masterpiece. Yet Disney Infinity are getting hundreds of dollars from thousands of people and are being allowed to have a subpar, sort of subpar game, but a subpar technical experience in a game. But I don't want to rant all night about it. There are some positives, I have to say. But something I do want to bring up is that Logan posted an article which, I don't know, Will, you're going to bring up or something like
Yep,
that. But
I'm gonna bring it
there's
up
an
right now.
interesting article which I'd never heard of before. But this article talks about the fact that how most Toys to Life games aren't growing with their user base. And I look at my own kids and you look at the difference between what they're like at 3 years old and when they get to like 6 years old. It's massive difference. They're completely different people, and it's like, yeah, what are Disney doing? What's Disney Infinity doing to make sure that the kids that start playing and loving Infinity at age 3 and 4, how are they changing their game so they're going to love it when they're 8, 9, 10, let alone, teenagers and through to adults? I'm not saying they aren't doing that. I'm just saying I'd never thought about that before, that at our age, a game cycle over 3, 4 years doesn't mean much to us because we don't change, mentally or anything like that. But for young kids, they're experiencing the game on a whole nother level as they grow older. And it's a question of, yeah, how are Disney making sure that their game is aging appropriately so that they are still relevant to a teenager versus when they were a young kid? Not an easy thing to do, but I thought that was a really interesting article and looking at it that way. You know what I mean? Because I still don't feel like my biggest, not complaint, or my biggest first thought when I saw Battlegrounds is I feel like this is a game for babies. The story seemed really oversimplistic. You know what I mean? Everything just seemed like this seems like it's targeted to the youngest of kids, and I'm sure they'd love it. But I thought, why wouldn't Marvel want to make a playset that's got a super engaging story that, you know, supplements their movies? You know what I mean? Why is that? Because, I mean, look at a movie like Zootopia. Disney are the masters of creating kids content that is also intriguing to adults. So I don't feel like we're getting that same level of, you know, attention with our playset stories, which I think ties into this article.
I kind of agree there. It's really tough. Like, I love the play sets. I love the experience that they give. I would love them more if they were a little bit more narrative driven. Like there seem to be say you take a Star Wars play set. There's a half hour of content, then there's mini games, fetch quests, half hour of content, mini games, fetch quests, half hour of content, mini games, fetch quests. You beat the last boss, you've completed the play set. I would love if play sets evolved to be something like obviously it's not going to be an Uncharted. It's not going to be a 20-hour epic with I don't know, acting and voice capture and performance capture. But it'd be nice if there was a nice chunk of the game, which is from hour 1 to hour 6 or 7, you're following a nice narrative story, and then have all those other fetch quests and stuff added after. Because it really seems like some of the fatigue is that you're doing the same stuff from one playset to another playset. In one, you're busting up garbage to collect springs, and the other one you're picking people up and throwing them in a pen. Mm-hmm. You're doing different actions, but it's essentially the same thing. You're forced to spend an hour of busy work to then get to the next chunk of narrative, which is what people love single player games for, is telling a story from start to finish and being part of that story, living that story. It would be really great if that's what Disney Infinity evolves into, where each story is a long chunk of content that the player can go through, and then have a hub where you can do all these fetch quests and the collect things and unlock toys, and all that other stuff is kind of just gravy on top of an already awesome story. I would love that, because I love narrative driven games. I'm a fan of Uncharted. I'm a fan of Ratchet and Clank, more so than, say, Call of Duty single player or Call of Duty multiplayer. Like, I love games that tell a really good story, and I love the stories that are told in Disney Infinity. I just wish that they were bigger and a lot more involving.
So I have two questions. The first one's for you, Lloyd, and then the second one is for the both of you. So, Lloyd, your kids have been longtime fans of the Skylanders series. And this article, it's important to note, and we'll put this in the show notes if you want to go check it out. It's from gamesindustry.biz. And the article title is "Toys to Life's Problem Isn't Saturation, It's Fatigue." And it's not, it is singling Disney Infinity out, but not only Disney Infinity. It's talking about Toys to Life games in general. Has Skylanders, because I've watched their game, even as a non-player, I've watched their game kind of evolve over time. Have they done that just to make their content fresh from like a broad perspective, or do you think that they've made steps to grow with their primary audience's age?
Each story from the first Skylanders, I haven't played the most recent one, the one where you're driving around. I didn't pick that one up. But from the first Skylanders to Giants to Trap Team to whatever, or to what is it? Doesn't matter. I don't care about the names of them right now. But you basically had a story that you go through, and my kids loved it. Like, when we first played the first Skylanders, they were a little bit small to play through some of the platforming and some of the stuff, but they loved the story. You're playing through the levels, you're doing something like, I have to get this key because this guy needs to open this door to get the thing to fix the engine, to go to this place, to go save the sheep. Like, there's a story. You're doing stuff in the level that maybe are fetch questy, but you're doing it to further the story. There's a strong narrative from the start to the end. Maybe not as much in the first one as some of the other ones. And my kids grew to love Chaos. They grew to love all of the cast of the game, even though your main character isn't the star of the game because you're changing characters by putting different ones down. But all of the characters that were around in the city, in your airship or whatever, the story that they told, my kids loved it. They loved it from the first game all the way to the last game. They loved going through the story, experiencing that, and then doing the other fun stuff, going to the battle arenas, fighting, doing the tower defense modes. Like all that stuff was in addition to already enjoying the really great story.
Okay. So the question for both of you, do you not think that 3.0 has taken steps to evolve their gameplay in a more sophisticated manner? I mean, think about everything before was kind of a copy and paste, and in many respects 3.0 is the same when it comes to playsets. Like the fetch quest is a perfect example. We had Christian Spicer on the show a couple months ago, and he is a player of the game, and he over on the DLC podcast, and he's a comedian, and he enjoys the game. Lloyd, I was listening to a podcast with him, the DLC podcast, where it wasn't focused on Infinity, and he said that he got bored out of his mind with the Force Awakens playset because it was just like all the other playsets he had played with the fetch quest. But then you throw in the Battlegrounds, which has mixed reception, but at least they did something different. And if you look at it, in my opinion, from kind of a mechanical perspective, it is a little more advanced. You have to load your characters in. You have to load your power disk, and so there takes some planning in that respect. And then, just kind of aside to that, the different gameplay introduced with the Inside Out playset, and I think it's hard to. My opinion is it's hard to pinpoint gameplay evolutions based on the age of. Like, how do you separate just adding fresh content to pre-existing players regardless of age? How do you say, okay, that's what this is, versus we have evolved the gameplay based on our primary demographic growing up, essentially?
3.0 took the base game that was already a lot of fun. You have your toy box, you have your other stuff, and they iterated on the mechanics, the gameplay mechanics. They made a better fighting system because you have force-wielding Jedis. So they had to have the hand-to-hand combat and the sword-based combat, whether it's a light sword, a laser sword, or just a normal sword. They had to iterate on that. They added driving mechanics, which I can't really see the difference between the driving in the actual racing game to in 2.0 building a track and racing around it. But they did make small changes to make it a little bit better. They added the fighting game mechanics and all that. So they're evolving the game that way. Maybe not the graphical engine. Like, it does look better if you're playing on the PlayStation 4 than it did on PS3. Kind of. A lot of the components are still there, but I think what they've been focusing on is making the core gameplay a lot stronger and a lot more mature, which is great. But now I hope with not coming out with 4.0 this year, that they're coming out with new play sets. I hope they take that time to say, all right, we iterated, we made the fighting good, we made this good. Let's tell good stories. Let's build a play set that really is 6 hours of meaty content, not just fetch quests, because then that would be evolving the game as well, not just evolving parts of the game, the engine, the fighting system, the climbing system, all that stuff. I would love to see that, because my kids, to be honest, like, they play through the play set in chunks. Like, they'll play through some of the story stuff and then they get bored with the fetch quest, so they go do something else, and then they maybe come back later and they finish off another chunk of that play set, and then they go do something else, then come back and maybe complete it. Where when they play Skylanders, when they play other games like Ratchet and Clank, my son loved Ratchet and Clank. He would go from world to world just playing through the level and doing that because it's telling a story. There's a carrot on the stick leading you from one thing to another. So I really hope that for 3.0 and going forward, whatever 4.0 or 5.0 become, that they evolve the storytelling and the gameplay around the storytelling, not just the underlying mechanics that no one you can't really quantify how a fighting system is better than another one, except you're playing it and it feels better, but you really can't put that as a bullet point on the box. Having a long story to tell would be great.
Totally.
Yeah, my feelings are it's one of, again, there's a couple, like, they got it right in 1.0, people. The playsets in 1.0 were nailed, because it wasn't, like I said it when with the Force Awakens playset, I was disappointed in it because it was a retelling of the movie, and that wasn't what was the standard set in 1.0. It was a playset is a unique story with the characters you love. Here's an opportunity, you love those characters, here's them in a different story. Now, obviously, Star Wars being who they are, it's obviously going to be a lot harder to get that across the line to allow a fresh Star Wars story with those Force Awakens characters. We understand that, but like, that's no excuse for the fact that all the play sets in 1.0 were really unique and interesting, because you were on the edge of the seat because you didn't know, figuratively, because you didn't know what was going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like, I know how this story goes. And so it just felt like a story I already know with fetch quests thrown in between. And they've sort of been making that mistake sort of more regularly, I guess. And I can't see that changing. Like with this Finding Dory playset coming out, is that just going to be a retelling of the movie? If so, a lot less interesting. Same with the Alice playset. Is it a playset, or is that only figures? I don't know.
I do not remember.
No, but anyways, and then there's this whole side of things where they've established this idea that playsets aren't going to be around. So I don't understand the decision to make a brawler game, which I just gave props for giving use of your old characters, but that kind of all gets erased if I can't play that brawler in 4.0 or whatever the next iteration of Disney Infinity is. And so once again, there's this disconnect of, like, in my opinion, they could have separated, completely ripped all the story out of the brawler and just put it on a disc like the carts was, instead of making it a playset. And then that makes more sense if you're going to iterate on that over time. So in 4.0, you can expect an even more robust karting experience, an even more robust fighting experience, and then playsets stand alone as pure story-based driven, platforming or whatever it is. I appreciate all the time they put into the fight mechanics. Obviously, you need that for Star Wars. But again, in my mind, why wouldn't you create a playset that's more similar to Mario Party, that the characters don't matter that much? It's just, I want to play as Elsa in a board game style thing, and I get to play as that character. That's what these mobile games are doing really well, is that, like that dice game, it's just a costume you're putting on, but you're excited to get the character that you want. You don't want to feel penalized for liking, Mr. Incredible, but let's face it, he's useless in a fighting mechanic, in whatever the latest version of Disney Infinity is. So I don't understand why they're not trying to create experiences that are more inclusive.
Jason?
We lost him.
Waiting.
Oh,
it's all right.
And you're back.
Yeah, so we've this a vast amount of money on all these figures that we love, and I would love to use them more. So why aren't they trying to create experiences that allow us to use that back catalogue of characters?
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? It just seems this real... And what ends up happening is it just feels like a real big experiment. They're just going to continue to experiment on the game.
Yeah.
And it's just a roll of the dice every time, and yet we still are expected to continually buy figures.
It's interesting because in Star Wars they changed the game so that you could have any figure from any of the Star Wars movies in any of the play sets. Love that. And then they did the same thing for Battlegrounds. It's any Marvel figure can go into Battlegrounds and fight, and you're not being limited to the 4 or 5 that come with that playset. I guess they did that in 2.0 as well, but they did it even better in Battlegrounds. My hope is that future playsets, maybe a Kingdom Hearts playset that might come in the future, you can play as any Disney figure at all because that's all part of the Kingdom Hearts universe. Or maybe focus more on telling unique stories that aren't tied to the 3 figures that come with that playset, so that you can bring in any single Disney figure into this game. If you want to run with Jack Skellington and Jack Sparrow and you run through and beat the playset that way, you can do that. That would be awesome because it's tough. Like, it's not so bad now. My kids are older. But when my daughter was young, she was sad that she couldn't play with Violet in every single thing. She really loved Violet and she wanted to be that character, but she couldn't. She was really sad about that. They're older, so they kind of get it now. But it would be nice moving forward if they had some sort of place where they could take all of their favorite Disney characters, or maybe every single figure that's out for Disney Infinity, whether it's Marvel, Star Wars, or Disney, into one big mashup playset that is telling a unique story, similar to what Lego Dimensions did, where there's a new boss, a new big bad guy. He's pulling in things from Back to the Future and Ghostbusters and DC Universe and Midway Arcade, like things that aren't even close together, but they're telling a unique story and bringing in parts of all the different worlds into that. I would love if there was a playset like that coming out for Disney Infinity 3 or Disney Infinity 4, because I think the games would get that much more play. My kids wouldn't have to just look at the figures sitting on a shelf, because they only play with the new figures in toy box mode, and it's only the ones that they're playing the new playsets with. They don't really want to go to the other ones because they can't use them in the playsets as well. It'd be nice if there was a place where they could do that moving forward. So hopefully, with what we've seen happen to Star Wars and Marvel, that really happens moving forward with all the Disney characters as well.
Well, Maxi Geek in the chat is saying exactly that. The Toy Box Takeover is a great example, being able to use characters in fully original story, and there's such a wide history of content to pull from, and that was a perfect example of getting away from their rule. But is the rule forever going to exist? Like, will Disney Infinity ever be successful enough where it has the clout to say, you know what, we get it, but people understand what Infinity is now, and they understand that there's the possibility for mashups. So ease up on the reins a little bit there, Marvel. Could that ever happen to you, see?
I hope so. It needs to happen. No, I agree. I want Infinity. Like, honestly, when I think of Infinity, I look at all my figures. This just happened. It's so disappointing. I was excited to get back into Infinity because the concept of all these characters from this property that I love being able to exist in an Infinity world. I love the idea of getting a Baloo, introducing that into my Infinity world, and getting to experience content with him. And then it's just a disappointment when it's not there when you get there. Mm-hmm. Toy Box Takeover is an excellent example, and you have to question, why haven't they updated that? Why isn't there a monthly update to that? It says, oh, we've got a brand new whole world of Toy Box Takeover coming. It's just like, you know what I mean? No-brainer stuff. It's like they throw out an idea and that's it. It's like you either love it or hate it. There's no expansion on it. There's no tweaking it based on, like, are they using metadata? Are they tracking what we are playing and then going, okay, well, they seem to be liking that, let's focus more on that? It just doesn't seem like that. Well, or if they are, they're not telling us, getting excited about it.
So I'll agree with that point right there, is that, you know, we're still in this kind of like black hole of not only no information, but the unknown of what is Infinity moving forward. We really have no idea. But Jason, the only defense I will go to for Disney Interactive on what you just said is updating Toy Box Takeover or adding content to Toy Box Speedway. Granted, they weren't as full as playset experiences, but I would see that being a sequel experience, a sequel improvement. I would see that maybe this fall having and someone mentioned it in the chat. I think that's a brilliant idea, is the sequel, Toy Box Takeover sequel, continue that story. But man, how cool would it be if they made that a playset? It was almost a playset, but But you know what? Make it a playset. But because you've already framed it as Toy Box Takeover, then again, you can get rid of those rules. But you can make some gameplay improvements if you had the support behind it of making it its own full playset. So I don't know. I guess I just wouldn't see updating Toy Box Speedway or Toy Box Takeover, or even the farm for that matter, which saddens me, until
Spot on.
the next thing, whether that be a huge 20 gigabyte update in the fall that's 4.0 but not being called 4.0, or would even suck even more is if they did wait for those improvements for 4.0, which probably, in my opinion, would be what they would do.
Yeah, but I think that's ultimately the problem. As I said, they're treating it like a game. It's got to be a platform, and I think it should be updating. As I said, there's no point in why get excited about buying the figures outside of having that figure when you know there's nothing to do with it. Even though if you're going to announce, oh yeah, we've got playsets coming out, but we know we can't play Baloo in Finding Dory. So it's almost like, you know what I mean? Oh, that's great, another playset to play with. Oh, but I've got to buy more figures to play it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no extended value, and I just feel like, you know, even like most games today have DLC. Like Bloodborne had DLC that came out, and I just think if you're having people continually throwing money into the pit, so to speak, we should be seeing regular updates that make the game interesting and draw us back on a gameplay, not just because the figures are so cool.
Yeah.
And again, with the amount of money we're sinking in there, you can't tell me that there's not budget enough to be putting teams on depth and, you know, creating depth in these different experiences. Like, really, you can't come up with one more racetrack to be added to that package?
Especially if they're not having to do all the QA work and development work of a brand new edition.
How cool if you got a new playset, drop the playset piece down, it unlocks extra stages for Toy Box Takeover and Raceway, and you get these extra experiences for content you already own. Like, that would be amazing. You put down Finding Dory, you get an undersea race, and you get a something else for Toy Box Takeover. Like, if they could keep adding content, even if you have to buy something to get that added content, it would give you an excuse to go back and replay some of this old stuff.
Yeah,
100%. So it's not a hard thing, is it, to come up with an idea that makes it more interesting? That's why I don't understand why there must be some technical reason why they haven't done that. Absolutely. Why wasn't there a Baloo themed vehicle and racetrack that came along with the Baloo figure?
Yeah.
You know, any guess? Now, I'm still a huge believer in the toy box, and I still look at the Raceway and I look at Battlegrounds, and I still look at it and go, I'm yet to see something that they couldn't have just put in a toy and allow people to make endless brawling arenas or endless tracks. I still believe that's a potential down the track. You create the tools to get your community to build content like that. But see how that's contradictory? It's like, one hand they're like, the toy box, build what you want. Oh, but you can't do it good enough, so we've created a tighter racing experience for you here. And you can't do a battle arena good enough in a toy box, so we've created a more, interesting experience over here. That's just contradictory.
Yeah.
That's what, pick a side and stick with it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lemon, the chat room, is saying something interesting. They did character toys in 1.0. And that's true. You put a character down in 1.0, you got stuff for putting the character down, but you also got a unique level that you could only ever play with that character. And that stuff disappeared with 2.0 and 3.0.
I mean,
more and more, they've nailed it in 1.0. They nailed it.
They did.
And then they just threw it out the window.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
We got a lot of stuff. We got a lot of benefits with the upgrades, but some of the stuff that made Disney Infinity 1 so cool was lost with 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And it still irks me that we can't play those play sets again, because people are on new consoles now. We don't have the ability to go and play our like Wii. Do I have a Wii anymore that works? I don't think so. How can I go and play my old stuff? Like, it's not something that is really possible.
two things on that point, Lloyd. Day one of backward compatibility being announced on Xbox One, Lim in our team chat was like, "Does this mean I can play 1.0 on my Xbox?" And we're like, "Nope, because you can't use accessories." So people still want. I still want that. I think that the 1.0 Pirates is still my favorite.
Oh, hands
experience.
down. They have not that like great story, great mechanics, great look, everything nailed.
And the coolest thing about it was mechanics in there that you couldn't do in the toy box. So
Yeah.
it was a unique experience that felt special. We've kind of lost that now because for the most part, anything that is in a toy box or in a playset, you can do in the toy box. It might not look as polished, but you could do fighting segments. You could, like with where you're flying a Millennium Falcon or whatever. You can do all that stuff in the toy box. But it was really cool in 1.0, this thing that could never be done in the toy box because it was special and unique, and it felt like something that is a part of the story, not part of the underlying toy box.
And I think we do have to keep kind of our nostalgia in check that it was a brand new experience at the time too. So I wonder if we mechanically looked at Pirates then versus Twilight now, how we would kind of compare the two. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that, you know what, the three of us agree. We've publicly stated on the podcast we want to play our 1.0. We want to play all play sets, even 2.0, which were pretty bad. I would still like the ability to play those now in 3.0 instead of having to put a new disc in. And I've witnessed many conversation in the community, heated conversation. A lot of toy box artists, I feel like, not to generalize, but I've witnessed a lot of toy box artists argue against this point because I've heard that if you put that development time towards that instead of bug squashing or new toy box toys or new Creativa toys, you know, what do you want? Do you want content you've already had and gone through and played, or do you want brand new content? Well, guess what? They basically said they're not giving us new content. Yes, they're giving us new play sets and they're giving us new figures, but the big leaps and bounds when it comes to toy box building toys comes from iterative versions, not toys you unlocked in the playset. Take a look at how bad the unlock, in my opinion, how bad the unlocks are in Battlegrounds. And so now's the perfect time, and it's a lull, and as fans, we're kind of sitting here waiting, not really knowing what's happening. Give us those old toys and those old toy boxes, and make those original investments that we made, which hasn't gotten any cheaper. Well, I guess $5 cheaper soon, but up to this point, it hasn't really gotten any cheaper. They're still sitting over here on the desk that are worthless to me because I don't even have a 360 anymore to play those things. And if you compare those figures compared to 3.0 figures, they are not nearly as robust. And so, sorry, that was I borrowed Jason's rant hat for a moment. But I feel like now they could get away with making those playsets forward compatible, where it might have been a little bit more sensitive for the community if they had done it between actual numbered releases.
Yeah, and again, I want to figures sold out here in Australia. I can't find the figures. You can't complain about resources when you're getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars per game. I just don't. I'm sorry, it's not good enough.
No, but that's not how the world works.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't. It doesn't matter. My point is, you can't. Obviously, the team is X size.
Right.
You can't and again, we don't know the figures.
Yeah.
Obviously. But if they're making excessive profit, at what point does it become, profiteering? It's like, we're just going to milk these Infinity people. Doesn't matter what the game's like. They're going to buy the figures regardless. You know what I mean? There's a certain element of oh, we hear you. You want the old play sets. Well, honestly, much. I mean, people are doing HD remakes all the time. Would it cost
Yeah, I think I got what you're saying, Jason, and I agree.
Yeah. Like as a parent with kids, I know a lot of my friends who don't podcast and don't buy games to talk about on a show and have a hobby, all that stuff. When they buy stuff for their kids, it's few and far between. The kids get some stuff for their birthday, some stuff for Christmas or whatever. And they were really disappointed when I told them that 2 and 3 can't use the 1.0 stuff.
Yeah.
And it's tough because they know that with Skylanders, a lot of the stuff was forward compatible to a point. Like the level packs in the first game stopped working in the 4th game, but they got use out of 3 games before that they were made obsolete. It would be really nice if there was a way to do it. Like your question with the argument with the toy box builders, do you want to just replay the old thing or do you want new stuff? The answer is yes. I want all of it. I want to do the old stuff and the new stuff. I want to be able to play with my old stuff in the new engine. Maybe don't have it look better or change it at all, but at least be able to go through and play that again, so I could dig out my Pirates figures, my Lone Ranger figures, and all that, and actually use them again.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. It is a money thing. Like, I just think at a certain point you're entitled to expect more from a title that you've spent tons of money on. You know what I mean? As I said, Uncharted 4 could be a 3-hour experience, but like, I'm getting what I paid for. Whereas Disney Infinity, I want to play it more because I've invested so much time and energy into it. I love it.
Yeah.
Let me enjoy your game. That's all I'm saying. As a collective group, we all want, and I feel like we deserve everything. We paid for a playset. Let us play it. Yeah. The rant episode.
The rant.
I like it. I haven't been on for weeks. You got to let me rant for a whole hour, and then I can be positive in future shows. But like, as I said, pent up aggression, 5 weeks, just get it all out in one show.
They say people fight because they're passionate, and if you have things to say that aren't always positive, I think that's a sign of passion and I don't know, respect in some ways to the game, because you want it to be perfect, and nothing ever is going to be perfect, but by gosh, make it as perfect as it can be. And according to Jason, that just means making it rain a little bit for more.
Well, Jason, just the reality is, I don't think of Disney Infinity as a game. For me, it is a platform. It is an experience. It is a community. It's so much more than just a game.
Yeah,
so,
true.
You know what I mean? And therefore, I have much higher expectations of it.
Yeah.
So that's
exactly.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Cool. You have about 5 minutes, buddy. Do you have anything else you didn't get a chance to talk about?
Dude, I can't remember. Probably.
The
honestly,
answer then is no.
The minute they come out with an app that just like sucks thoughts out of your head and turns it into a podcast, I'm all over that, because
I think,
you know what I mean. Every new figure, I've got something to say about it. But I do want to leave on the fact that I love Disney Infinity.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the developers. I still think the figures and the concept, everything is cool, and I feel like they are getting closer to where I think it should be. It's just tell us. I don't like, stop living in the past of like leaks. Like, stuff leaks anyway, so why not just be bold and like, hey, this is where we're thinking of going with Infinity. Just ask us. Mm-hmm. Couldn't we avoid so much if it's like, hey, this is the direction we're thinking of going with it, and we can tell them, nah, stupid idea, or wow, that excites us. I'm going to keep buying your figures because I believe the direction you're heading. That's all we're sort of, asking for. So I hope I know it will continue to improve over time, and that's why I stick around and continue to support the game.
Well, I mean, that's why, like you were saying earlier, Jason, not to put words in your mouth, but you don't have time to do anything. You don't have time to do any sort of gaming whatsoever. But the fact that, you still want to be on the show, it's as always just as much your show as it is ours. But you went out yesterday to get all the figures and stuff, and we were talking before the show started, like, you still get just as excited with them and the possibility of them.
That's right.
Because you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
So awesome, guys. For not having any news, that was a great show. Lots to talk about. Jason, you carried the show, especially when the dog was barking. So
That's all right. He was angry too. That's fine.
now I expect you to spend the rest of your day looking for your rant hat.
Yes, I will, because that concerns me.
Because it's more than just a rant hat.
I'm sorry I had to deliver that rant without the hat on, and I will attempt to find it
Oh, Lloyd,
for future
rant again.
episodes.
That's awesome.
Feel free to rant at me on Twitter, and if you don't agree with anything that I said, you're wrong.
And you can tell Jason how he's right or wrong. For those listening to the audio version, your Twitter is at the Jason Haynes.
That is correct.
There can be only one. Lloyd, I'm going to give you a chance to plug your stuff. But if everyone's, since I didn't have a chance because we moved on earlier, if anyone's interested in hearing about your new toy and the new joysticks you got for your Retro Pi, everyone should go check out our latest episode of the D-Res podcast over on res.tv, where we had a lengthy conversation about that.
Yeah, it should be up on the feeds and the YouTubes later this evening. It is so much fun. Put it together. It was a fun process. The building of it is all of buying something off Amazon, having it show up in 2 days, plugging in an SD card with an image on it, and it just runs. But that's not the fun thing. The fun is finding the keyboards that work with it, the USB joysticks, the X arcades, all that stuff. That is what the fun is. And we did talk about more that in more detail on the D-Res podcast. But yeah, if you want to find out other stuff that we do here on the Res TV network that this show is part of, amongst others, just head over to res.tv, rezd.tv. You can also check out our YouTube channel, and I would encourage you to go over there and subscribe or follow both on Twitch and on YouTube, twitch.tv/ResTV and youtube.com/ResTV. REZD-TV, because we do put a lot of content up that is maybe a little different than just a normal gaming show. We have general geekery kind of content, talking about Marvel and comics and whatnot. I'm going to be doing a lot more retro game stuff, doing streams and maybe talking in depth about some games. Will and I have been chatting about some ideas of stuff that might become parts of D-Res and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff coming, and the best way to get it in the know is to follow us on both Twitch and YouTube over at res.tv or one of our other channels.
Awesome. You can all follow me on Twitter at iLiam, and you can see our show Twitter up there at Disney Infinity TV. And yeah, we do live streams in the morning. Lim and other fellow streamers have been doing a lot of Infinity streams, so make sure you're sub to the channel. Gentlemen, I think that's going to wrap up this week's Jason. It's awesome, as always, man. We miss you. I know people out there miss you, and love hearing your thoughts on the game to this very day.
Well, that's very kind. And I have many more thoughts to deliver, so look forward to next time.
Perfect. We'll have you on again real soon. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap up this week's show. Thank you so much if you're listening to this after the fact or watching us live. We really appreciate it. It's going to end it. We hope you enjoyed this week's show. And until next time, we hope your week is filled with infinite possibilities. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Inside Infinity podcast. If you like what we do, please check us out. Follow us, subscribe, do all those fun things you do on the internet. Check out our parent network, as Lloyd said, over at res.tv. Also, if you're interested in supporting us in other ways, you can check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Disney Infinity TV, and become a patron of ours. Get your name at the top of the screen each and every episode as a part of our Patreon Hall of Heroes.